Now to what would have been tonight's top story with incoming New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and the biggest appointment he's going to make as he prepared to take over here come January 1. Mr. de Blasio today named former Commissioner Bill Bratton to NYPD's top spot.
I love this profession. I love this city. I love this department. I have had a love affair with it since 1956.
But behind the smiles and the warm feelings at today's presser comes some serious questions about Stop and Frisk, program Bratton helped institute then expand, and the program de Blasio has promised to end. You can argue how he embraced it in the primary is really the reason why he is the mayor today. And for more, let's bring in Andrew. Andrew, this is going to be interesting how this thing gets navigated.
We are not that far removed from Bill Bratton with his full embrace of Stop and Frisk, Rich. But let's begin with Bill Bratton, the man and the commissioner. It's a title Bratton has had before, first named commissioner by then Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Bratton ran the NYPD from 1994 to 96, leaving, many say, when he and the mayor began feuding over who deserved the credit for a drop in crime. Bratton introduced CompStat to the department, the data-driven crime tracking system which begat Stop and Frisk. He also relied on so-called community policing, a staple of the de Blasio campaign. It is that experience, the incoming commissioner said today, that makes him the right man to help change the NYPD from within.
At a time that police and community should be so much closer together, that there should be a bond of legitimacy and trust between them, that is not the case in so many communities in this city, and that is unfortunate. But it can be corrected.
But despite those words, the relationship between Bratton and Stop and Frisk will trouble those who want the policy gone. It and Bratton have been wedded together for years. In Los Angeles, where Bratton was named commissioner in 2002, he expanded the use of Stop and Frisk. In some ways, it appeared to work better than it did here in New York. Arrests did rise as Stop and Frisks rose in 30% of stops, as opposed to 6% here in New York. But critics point to a 49% increase in stops in L.A., and the racial breakdown. Blacks stopped in far greater proportion in L.A. than population numbers would indicate, though for Hispanics, the numbers in L.A. were a better match. But even as recently as this summer, Bill Bratton sounded like a police leader unwilling to give up on Stop and Frisk.
As it relates to the issue of stop, question, frisk, it is the most basic, fundamental, necessary tool of American policing. You cannot function effectively without it.
Cannot function without Stop and Frisk. He said that 6 months ago, Rich.
Now, de Blasio, Dominic, says he thinks there's a place for the policy, but he doesn't believe it can match. For me, I've always found this so convoluted. It almost seems a little half pregnant to me. How's this going to work? Because you got the soundbite Andrew just played. You got his record in L.A. when he used it. You got his background here in New York. How is this going to play out?
First of all, and I was there, so I know that Bill Bratton was run out of town because New York was not big enough camera-wise with Giuliani in Israel at the time that Giuliani made it clear that when he got back from Israel, Bill Bratton was gone.
Because Bratton was taking some credit for the drop.
Because Rudy, it was a Time, I believe a Time magazine cover that Bratton appeared on. And that was a major no-no with Rudy Giuliani. New York was only big enough for one star at the time, and that was Rudy Giuliani. And Bill Bratton and his team, they were pushing Bratton, go, go, go. You could take on Rudy. It's because of you the crime went down. Rudy showed Bratton who the boss was. So in many ways, Richard, this is redemption for Bratton. But as far as your question, stop, because he's now back, there's so many stories related to this. But now that he's back, how this is going to work, I don't know. First of all, Bill Bratton is a politician. So if de Blasio says cut back on Stop and Frisk, they're going to do exactly the same thing, but they're going to call it something else. You better believe he's not going to run afoul to this mayor again. It's going to be very, very interesting. But remember, the reason why you have Stop and Frisk to begin with is because of Bill Bratton. It goes back to the broken windows theory that he brought with Maples, who's now deceased, when Bratton was the police commissioner in Boston. And he brought it to New York.
Broken Windows, also the piece that Manhattan Institute wrote for Rudy in 93, 94 timeframe, 93 during the campaign. It's really ironic that the first appointment, the first major appointment, if you want to take the first deputy mayor aside for 1 second, because they always say the police commissioner is more important, frankly, than the first deputy mayor, is Rudy's pick. Here's the guy that he ran against. De Blasio ran against Rudy and tore apart Joe Lhota for being close to Rudy. And what's the first thing he does? He brings a Rudy Giuliani appointee back in here.
There are practical questions I think a lot of people at home. Bratton, Kelly.
That's
To
the other
the
story that's
outside,
going
to the
on.
outside person, I'll count myself among it. There's really only 2 guys qualified to be chief of
that's
police in New York.
Where I was going to go with this for a second
That's the
was,
second
what
story.
about Rafael Pinheiro and what about Banks? These are 2 gentlemen that are top in the NYPD right now. One Hispanic, one African American. Where were they in this thing, and why do we go back to Bill Bratton?
Did Blasio have to make this pick, given the
Yes.
attacks that Logan
Yes,
made
he had-
against him?
No.
Specifically, that we're going to go back to the
I would actually
crime
say
rate
what
in
he
the
did was he
70s.
made this pick because he was afraid of where it would go, and if he didn't go that way, this is his insulation. He campaigned one way, he's governing another. That's going to be something he's going to have to pay a price
Richard,
for.
number 1, campaign Bill de Blasio, that's out the window. All of those campaign promises, he's already reneging on all of those. But to deal with your question, that's the second story. The Bill Bratton Kelly story. There's been a 25-year feud between those 2 guys as to who's the best cop of New York City. And so they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
The Kelly clan, being
Right.
an Irish guy, I'll say that
Right.
freely. Kelly clan will tell you they started this back under Dinkins, and
Right,
Bratton
it
picked
was-
it up and carried it. Comstock, I
But
believe,
Kelly-
was actually
but
under
Kelly-
Dinkins, and Bratton built it up a bit more
Yeah,
because
but
of what
Kelly,
was going on.
I agree
and,
with that.
And there's a lot
but
of
remember,
this.
But remember Jack Maples, the guy that was a transit guy? He's the guy that gets the credit behind broken windows. And the theory behind broken windows is no crime is too small. We'll focus
Quality
on
of
anything.
life
But that was
Quality
the
of life
squeegee
crime.
guys. It was turnstile jumpers, and
It
stuff like
was
that.
just-
So
it
de
was
Blasio,
graffiti, it was all the rest.
He had to go with Bill Bratton because if crime comes up, he needs a major name as police
Andrew,
I
commissioner.
don't think he had to go with him. I think he took the easy way out.
Maybe, but Andrew, I know progressives aren't crazy about this pick already. I'm saying, wait a minute. As Dominic said, the guy I heard on the campaign stump, he certainly picked a guy in his signature issue. Wouldn't be the first guy you'd think of if you want to get rid of stop and frisk. Now, I'm with Dominic in that there's a way to do both, and optics are almost as important here as the substance. That said, we're going to learn a lot, I think, not just by the people he surrounds, but some of the first actions. Is de Blasio progressive, or is he going to be practical first and foremost? And I think before January 1, I think in the next few weeks, how hard is he going to really push for this tax hike, as it relates to universal pre-K? Were they just words in the campaign, or will they be substance?
Well, and some of that's going to be reading the tea leaves from the appointments that he makes. We'll get a schools commissioner before too much longer. Yep. As OB mentioned, we had 3 other appointments that have already come through, including a first deputy chief of staff who had links back to, I believe, the Koch administration, as well as 2 longtime staffers of his, Dominic Williams and Emma Wolf. So clearly we know that he's loyal to his people. We'll see how much of a progressive he's going to wind up being, and also whether he decides to get involved in the speaker's race in the city council. The progressives are certainly making a push there to try to get a progressive city council speaker.
Yep.
I will tell you,
I got to hit a break here just for time.
Okay.
Real quickly.
Well, during the campaign, I spent time with Joe talking to Lynch, talking to the Hispanic Society of the NYPD, and they were very big, not Lynch, but the Hispanic Society was very big on Rafael and what would happen with him, and I think he didn't get enough light in this whole process in the end of the day, and Banks being pushed out in public by Kelly
It is
during this whole
fascinating,
time.
After 25 years, you get 2 guys
Not out the door,
who keep vaulting. Doesn't
public.
matter if it's a Republican
Wish
or
we
a
had more
Democrat as
time.
mayor. It's almost a separate world when it comes to the NYPD.
It is.
Okay, coming up next on RFL, it's hard to believe it's been almost a year since the massacre at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown. What is not hard to believe is that little has changed in America's gun laws in that past year. Up next, we will sit down with Paul Murray of the Newtown Action Alliance about their continuing efforts to make our streets a little safer.